ideas hearing from you about textile reuse. So I would wonder, I guess if we could just start, let's see, how many of us are there in this room? Looks like there's 15. If we would just quickly go around and introduce ourselves and say what organization we are from, that would be helpful. I'll start. I'm Ann McGovern from the Mass Department of Environmental Protection, and I work on waste reduction, the Green Team program, and composting, as well as textile recovery projects. So Elaine, you appear next on my screen. Oh, and by the way, I just wanted to announce that we're recording this session. And if anybody does not want the session recorded, please let me know and I will stop recording. So, Elaine, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi guys, can everybody hear me? So I'm relatively new to Massachusetts, moved here last year from New York City, and I work in live events mostly, but I'm also a maker. And in New York, we had a ton of resources for reusing textiles, especially functional textiles like performance fabric and ripstop nylon and things like that. And I have struggled on the North Shore to find a kind of equivalent system of reuse of materials, either for individuals or for school districts and things like that. So I'm called Ann like a crazy person, so that's why I'm here.
Great, thank you so much. Lenny?
Yeah, hi, I'm Lenny Freed. I'm co-owner of the Old Stone Mill Center in Adams. It's a 28,000 square foot building, and we call it a zero waste makerspace. And we've been working with a local linens facility collecting their linens discards. So we collect and redistribute 6.25 tons a year. So I have lots of information about what that crazy experience has been like. Can't hear anybody.
Ann, you should call on people.
Ann, you're muted.
No, we can't hear you, Ann. That's interesting. You don't look muted, but we can't hear you.
Let me try something.
Still can't hear you.
Well, I tell you what, while Ann's trying to sort that out, maybe I'll just go ahead around the room. I'm sorry, I'll introduce myself. I'm Veronique Blanchard. I'm the Municipal Assistance Coordinator from Western Massachusetts. And so, Ann, do we have you back?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Thanks, Veronique. Okay, so Janet?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Janet Dominitz. I'm the director of MassPIRG. I also have have a seat on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee for DEP, and we do a variety of campaigns and have been for years on reduce, reuse, recycle.
Great. Thank you, Janet. Cindy?
Good morning, Cindy Ahrens. I live in Lexington. I'm part of a group called the LPS Green Teams, which we've been working on composting and stuff in the schools, but I'm also on the Sustainable Lexington Committee and have been involved in lots of reducing waste forums and stuff like that in town.
Great, thank you. Peg Hall?
Hi, I'm Peg from Greening Greenfield. Been in Massachusetts for about 4 years. I'm a solid waste consultant, having put in 22 years of paid work in Connecticut before another 10 years of occasionally paid consulting work since then on lots of product stewardship stuff, but plenty of other topics as well, including working with Lenny on bag share.
Great, thank you. Fred Olson.
Hi, my name is Fred. I am the CEO for Planet Aid. And Planet Aid is, has been in Massachusetts since 1997, collecting clothing and shoes and textiles. We're located in Milford, Mass. And yeah, we recycle about 25 million pounds of textiles in Massachusetts each year. So that's why I'm here.
Great.
And I can also introduce, we have Monica Dutcher on this call.
Hey,
She
everyone.
is our communications manager. And she, at some point, she will reach out to DEP about this zero waste. And so we can make some publicity around it on our websites and publications and so on.
Great, thank you. Helen?
Oh, hi. I live in Cambridge. I have never gotten paid to be a recycler, but for years I have volunteered with a little program for homeless folks in Harvard Square, and the amount of stuff that we get donated and have to figure out what to do with it has led me to look at where are the outlets for textiles and fabrics and clothing. And I'm just curious to listen in.
Great, thank you. Amy Sullivan?
Good morning. Amy Sullivan. I work at MassDEP in Worcester. Work mainly with the waste site cleanup program, but I also do some work in the solid waste branch. And I volunteer for my town, Auburn. And I see still so many comments on social media with so many misconceptions about the textiles and what to do with them. There's just still a lot of questions out there. So just hoping we can get some more answers for people.
Great, thank you. Vital?
You're on mute.
Unmute.
Sorry, standard problem with Zoom. Hello, this is Vittal Deshpande. I'm an environmental program manager for the city of Somerville, working with DEP for a long time, and I'm excited to be part of this particular group. We do have textile recycling program, but would like to know more and get more ideas going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Vital. Christine?
Christine Wyman from Social Catalyst. We're a small nonprofit that makes products out of recycled videotape to help employ people with disabilities. And we use some textiles, and I'm interested in them because of the textiles that we use in our products.
Great, thank you. I think Marissa?
Hi everyone, my name is Marissa Perez-Dormitzer and I'm the Waste Reduction Manager for the Greater New Bedford Regional Refuse Management District. So we serve New Bedford and Dartmouth in their waste reduction programs. We also run the Crapo Hill landfill. And I've been thinking a lot about textiles with the upcoming possible ban and thinking how the two communities can handle the volume of textiles that DEP is looking to divert. So definitely interested in this issue.
Thank you. Will?
Did we hear from, oh, Will, yeah.
Yeah, no, good morning, everyone. My name is Will, but I'm the money guy at MassDEP, so I manage the recycling dividends program. And then I'm also in charge of the household hazardous waste program as well. And I also manage the intern program. So I was actually supposed to be, I was scheduled to be on another subgroup. So I just happy or fortunate to find myself here. So I will just enjoy it as a participant. Just to remind you all to know that the note taker is Veronique, which she'll be introducing herself. And yeah, I'm just happy to be here and just enjoy the conversation. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sarah, are you here now?
Yes, I'm here. And I'm not from an environmental organization. I'm a social worker and I'm just kind of here to learn. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Monica, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, nice to meet everyone here. I started at Planet 8 as a communications manager about 2.5 weeks ago. As Fred stated, I'm looking to do more reporting on the issue via Planet 8's communications platforms. So looking to do some dynamic reporting and tapping the expertise of people like yourself on this call.
Great, great, thank you. Mary?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Stecklin, and I'm the program manager of Berkshire Zero Waste Initiative. We do zero waste workshops and a bunch of other programs around zero waste. And one of my weak areas is learning about textiles reuse. So I'm excited to brainstorm with you guys.
Great, thank you. I think everyone has introduced themselves. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I can again.
Journey, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so just because it was when we were having communication issues, but yes, I'm the Municipal Assistance Coordinator for Western Mass, and am very pleased to see how much reuse is going on out here, and I look forward to learning more about how we can do more with textiles.
Great. And Will said you're the note taker for this session? Okay, great. Great, okay. I think that's all of us. And so I would like to kick this off by asking to all of you about what the challenges are that you face when it comes to textile recovery, such as collection issues, storage space, marketing, transportation, finding an outlet for the collected material, or so forth. And maybe we can get kind of a full list of those, so then we can go from there to try to figure out potential ways to respond and perhaps overcome them.
And can I ask a question first? And if you don't know the answer, it's fine. I'm sure I can look it up. But just to get the sense of what we're dealing with here in Massachusetts, does anybody know, I probably have it somewhere, I just can't remember the last time I looked at it, roughly of that 5.7 million tons that Erin showed, that's being disposed of now in Massachusetts, how much are textiles, and how much, so how much are we throwing away and how much are we recovering right now, just so we get a sense of the scope of the problem? Do you know that?
Well, I believe it's about 5% being thrown away, the 570 million tons. I think it's 275,000 tons are being disposed, but I don't have, that's from my memory. So
yeah, that sounds about right to me. I couldn't, so 5% of that 5.7 million tons is textiles. And then what's the other side of that? Like, does anybody know how much we are capturing right now into some kind of a reuse or recycle system? And maybe no one knows that that's part of the problem, but I just want to identify that if it is.
Yeah.
I wonder if it might have been covered in like the solid waste master plan, because I know there was a lot of good information in there. The proposed one.
Yeah.
I can give you some estimate of that, because according to the EIP numbers, only 15% of the textiles are being collected in the country. I think Massachusetts would be higher than that because of the focus on it. And I believe the number would be something like 20, at the most 25% of the textiles are being diverted. in Massachusetts currently. So if that is, what did you say, 275,000 tons? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that means we need to address something like 700,000 tons of stuff. Is that right, Fred?
No.
Oh, sorry.
You said 275,000 tons, right? Or 250,000 tons of textile approximately.
Yeah, 250, yeah.
Yeah, and that fits with my numbers too, because we usually say that every person throws out about 80 pounds per year. And if it's 6.5 million people in Massachusetts, that's about 500 plus 500 million pounds, which is 250,000 tons. So I think that's pretty accurate. But it's there's a lot more to be collected, and that's why we have this meeting, I guess.
So if that's what's being thrown out, I guess the question is, if 20 to 25% is being collected, then that would be like 50,000 tons or somewhere like around that. I don't know how to do the math backwards, but
No, it's more than that. So if it's
I guess it's fair to say the vast majority of textiles that need to be that people are done with are going into the waste stream rather than to reduce, reuse, recycle. So we have a big challenge, I guess is all I'm saying. It's not like we're capturing the last 10% or something.
No.
Okay.
I think that's correct to say.
Okay. Great.
So let's say to Anne's number there that is about 60,000 tons being actually recaptured out of the 250,000 tons. Ballpark figure. So maybe you have those numbers in your waste report, but those would be somewhere on the ballpark at least.
Yeah, so there's about 200,000 tons remaining that we need to capture. And not all of it is from households. We've learned that there are linen rental facilities that go through a lot of textiles as well, and other commercial retailers and so forth. So it's in addition to the household material, we have to get to that other material as well.
Yeah.
I see a comment from Marlene Connolly saying we are having trouble recovering textiles from people who are moving in and out of town. We've tried working with realtors, but have been told there are too many. Anyone have an idea? Well, that's a great idea, because it's when people are moving that a lot of that material comes out of closets.
I would just like to say, I think part of the problem, so we in Lexington, and I know that it's in other towns. I know I've seen Planet Aid bins all over the place in Belmont and Cambridge. In Lexington, I don't know when this started, but we have a partnership, I guess you will, with Bay State Textiles. So I'm assuming that Bay State would be a competitor of Planet Aid somewhat.
We all work together to lower the volume of textile.
Okay, good. It's good. It's good to hear that. But then recently, the town of Lexington also started contracting or partnering with Simple Recycling. And so the difference between Bay State and Planet Aid and Simple Recycling is that you have to take your textiles and put them in a bin wherever the locations are when you do Planet Aid and Bay State and whoever else is doing that. Simple Recycling pays less, but they will come and pick up from your curb. So maybe that's something, because when people are moving out, I mean, the difficulty is getting individuals, right, to change their habits. Right? It's like, I can just put it in my trash can and put it at the curb. So putting it in a different container and putting it at your curb, or a bag or whatever, and putting it at your curb for Simple Recycling is something that would be easier than you having to make a plan to drive it yourself to wherever the other bins are.
Yeah.
But if I could just ask, sorry, Cindy, I appreciate what you're saying. And I think as somebody that's new to the state, I will tell you that what I find frustrating just as a consumer and as a citizen is that there is no centralized place where I could go and, like, let's say volunteer. So let's say I'm moving in, or let's say I know somebody who's moving in and I can take their stuff for them and I can deliver that to whatever Planet Aid box there is. Like there's seemingly no group that's sort of state or regionally, you know, organized to that where I could volunteer and say, I'm willing to do that pickup for you because we know you're lazy and you're just going to put your shit in the curb. You know, like I don't see any way to that to me seems like a communication problem and an information problem, because there are people who are willing to do this stuff and there seems to be no portal for that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It will be like a Uber Haul instead of Uber Eats.
So
yeah, that would be great.
So I have one comment. Somerville uses simple recycling for last 3 years, and we are really happy. In general, I like to have more data from them, more systematic data and stuff like that. But overall, I'm really happy with their service. We are not doing for revenue sharing. Revenue sharing is a very minuscule part of the whole thing, and it doesn't matter. I wish revenue sharing is there for recycling than textile recycling, which we used to get a lot, but we now miss it. However, I heard that I have a couple of questions. One is that, is there any other alternative or competitor for simple recycling? And my question is because now we have to go through again new contract and everything. And it is always good to know what exactly other offerings are there in the market. In fact, I heard that simple recycling is also going through some certain challenges, although we don't find any challenge with them because of the COVID-19 particularly. And the other thing is that how, when we do, my concern is a little bit like recycling, that we were happy in general. I'm working in this industry for a long time, that we are a great recycler and Massachusetts is doing good job and everything. And then one fine day, we all found exactly how it works downstream. So my question is that how good data we have, even with the state, forget individual cities, about when Planet 8 or whatever other different companies, Planet 8, sorry, and other companies take recycling, textile recycling, how much it really gets, including simple recycling, how much it gets really recycled, reused. Do we have any data about the ultimate waste that they create also? Or we just assume that when we keep it on the curb for simple recycling or when drop it off in some box, we did our job and we are happy. But in reality, the situation is different.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it probably varies from company to company. Fred, I know Fred has data on that from Planet Aid.
So yeah, so the way we handle the data is that when we pick up from a bin anywhere, that bin is recorded in our database via barcode scanners, and we estimate how many pounds we pick up at any given time. And we have town and city reports that can be provided to all of you for what we pick up in your town or in Massachusetts. And then you asked how much of that is then eventually ending up as waste anyhow, right? So we don't have data for that from every town, but we do have data for how much tonnage we have to landfill or incinerate, which is about 18% of what we pick up. So that
18?
we have 18% trash. The trash has been escalating enormously in the last few years.
18 or 80? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we could
18 to 20% trash.
20%. Okay.
Parts of the year is 25%, especially in the summer when people have yard sales and things.
Okay, that's fine.
May I ask if that is trash that gets put in the bin, or is that textiles that are not able to be recycled or repurposed?
I do not know how big portion of that is textiles, but some textiles cannot be repurposed because they have been in the snowstorm, so they are wet. They have to be, and we don't have capacity to dry this. We collect about 100 to 150,000 pounds a day in Massachusetts. So it's a lot of stuff. Most of the trash is furniture, tires, mattresses. Yeah, big bulk stuff that people are just dropping, or contractors are dropping at our bins.
But that's not textiles.
That is not textiles. I think textiles might be, I don't know, 3 or 4% of it.
4?
3 or 4% of the total of the trash.
The trash.
So it's not a whole lot. But there's a lot of plastic. A lot of plastic.
What is the plastic from, Fred?
The plastic is toys, big toys, kitchens and stuff, kids. There's a lot of furniture, a lot of bedroom sets. They're not plastic, they're wood. And then a lot of mattresses and tires and propane tanks.
So to go back to your original question, you know, I've been doing this work for a really long time. And to me, the fundamental challenge with this is that the word textiles, I mean, to say we need public education is the understatement of the century. It's like, yes. What is a textile? Like, that is not a common everyday word. And so, you know, with all due respect, Elaine, like, I know it can be frustrating, but I don't think it has anything to do with laziness. I think, like, people just have understandably no idea what that word means. So that's number one. And then number two, even I, as like a professional campaigner on this stuff, when my kids were little and they would, like, you know, the t-shirt would get ripped or something, or the sneakers would get gone through, I would go, oh, this has to go in the trash. I can't donate this. You know, if they had a nice shirt they wore 3 or 4 times and then they grew out of it, I would bring it to Goodwill. But it was years before I learned that actually the ripped t-shirt actually can be, whatever the word is, recycled, repurposed, re-somethinged. And so, you know, I mean, there's 17 layers of this. Not that I think it's overly complicated and that we couldn't do this, but I feel like we have to name as a challenge doing the outreach and education so that people understand what to do, understand what textiles are, and then, you know, what is appropriate to donate for someone to purchase in a Salvation Army or a Goodwill or the local church or whatever, and then what goes to where and how. That's, you know, torn t-shirts you wouldn't give or donate to anybody, but actually is stuff that we can reuse. That very basic concept, I bet if you walk down any main street in any city in our state and you asked 50 people, you would get 50 different answers.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And those are, we submitted comments on the suggested ban on textiles. I know we're not talking about it, but we still are kind of talking about the ban on textiles. So I agree with the outreach. No one knows what should go in those bins. And I know years ago there was a presentation from Rhode Island where they did a campaign where they came up with a universal label for the bins. So they partnered with the various vendors and they came up with a universal label. And I really think that's needed because I completely agree. What is textiles? I talked to, I think it was Bay State, and they were going with clothing, shoes, and maybe linens, but to figure out what that wording should even be. And I think we need to do that before we ban textiles personally, because no one knows what textiles are. There's so much confusion. And in terms of another challenge, I know that some folks have simple recycling in their community, but we struggle just to collect textiles. So I see that as a barrier. We rely on clothing bins, and in New Bedford, they've recently tightened up their requirements on the clothing bins, and I know as a result, Planet Aid has removed their 20 or 30 bins from New Bedford.
Right.
So we don't really have a good collection system to get the textiles. I know in Dartmouth, I see on social media all the time pictures of overflowing clothing bins. So the system isn't working. And so I think before we ban them, we need to fix the system. So that'd be my suggestion.
So are there any collection bins in New Bedford, Marissa?
There are, but I keep hearing of vendors that pull out. There's Green Quest Partners, that's a vendor. They've pulled out of New Bedford. Bay State Textiles is still in New Bedford at the schools, but the ordinance, the city's ordinance, I guess I hear is very onerous on the vendors. And I'm not familiar with what other communities require, but obviously as a result, there are now fewer clothing bins in New Bedford. But I'm also saying that in Dartmouth, it's still a problem that they don't even have those onerous requirements, just constantly overflowing bins. And I know Bay State Textiles is just having trouble keeping up with them with the pandemic, but also considering that the ban will be coming down the pipeline in the future. They're thinking toward the future as well.
Yeah. Okay, great. I just want to make a mention of something that's in the chat. A couple of things: using different colored bags provided by towns that are specific to textiles for either curbside or drop off. We can incentivize towns to create their own plans to collect textiles. That's an idea from Mary out in the Berkshires. Peg Hall says, industry-wide, there is a campaign to get textiles that are not reusable clothing into the system. And MassDEP has been doing that. But individual companies or drop-off bins either do not want textiles that aren't usable clothing or prefer not to take it. It's not consistent. Even companies whose management takes it all have workers who say they don't. And that is true. That's a consistent problem that we have had trying to get the word out that all textiles can be donated. So those, I think we've covered a lot of the issues. And then Lenny wants to talk about commercial textile waste, which we will get to next. But before we do, I was wondering if Fred might put in a word about what Marissa said about the Planet Aid bins being removed from New Bedford. Yeah. Was that because of contamination, or?
There are several communities where the towns are putting in ordinances that makes it impossible to have bins. We are ourselves in Milford, Massachusetts, and Milford also have a very strict code for collection bins. So we have very few bins in Milford actually, and that's not helping the cause of collecting more textiles. Either you cannot put them on commercial parking lots, or the permit fee is too high. So all of us that collect used clothing, we do that to make money of it, whether you're a nonprofit or a for-profit. In our case, we use the money for overseas projects, but we cannot run our projects if you don't make money on it. So when you collect clothing that has a very, very poor quality, then we get claims from our customers and we lose money on it. So we need to figure out a way to actually operate very efficient. And we have currently a grant application in with DEP to add equipment to make more produce out of what we do for less money. But that's a real concern, what we do with that. I think that a lot of that goods that cannot be used as clothing can go to shredding. And there's a firm in Millbury, I believe, that do that. It's only one in Massachusetts, if they still do that. But it's a very small, you can't really make money on that. So the big portion of used textile we talk about, the ones above the 20-25% will maybe not be usable as sales to other countries. So what do we do with that? We need to figure that out.
Okay.
But in terms of permitting, that's one issue that prevents increased collection. Lexington has also a historic district. It's very hard to place boxes in Lexington, for example.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to address Elaine's comments though about taking the stuff and help people with it. I think there need to be a campaign made within DEP where all these resources that collects and reuse textiles are being collected in one place. So people have one location to go to find out what to do with it. Because we have bins, Base-Tech has bins, Simple Recycling I don't know about, but there are all kinds of companies out there competing with one another to do this. And to reach a full effect of it, we need to work together about it. And there need to be like an umbrella for that. Where are the bins? What are they doing with it? How do you get it there? Never mind if it's Planet Aid bin or Bay-State bin or Goodwill bin or CMYK bin or whatever it is, because the stuff need to be recycled. And my opinion about competition in this area is that everybody wins when we work together about it. And that's what I hope we can get out of DEP, honestly, doing this.
Thank you, Fred. These are all good points. There's more comments in the chat box about this, and I'm gonna copy those. But I do want to move on to commercial textiles as issues, as Lenny was asking. So Lenny, would you like to say something about that?
Yeah, I really, we have a 28,000 square foot building in Adams that we are calling a zero waste makerspace. And we have a unique relationship with a business down the road that's a linens facility. And they launder linens for the hotel and restaurant industry. And we've been collecting all of their linens discards for 3.5 years. And it's 6.25 tons a year. This is just one facility. There are 90 facilities across the state. All of them, from what I understand, it's standard practice for them to throw away all of their discards. And because of the nature of the industry, everything that they supply to the hotel and restaurant industry has to be in perfect, pristine condition. So this is a unique challenge for them. I've come to really sympathize with their problems in this area. So that's why we have called MassDEP to help with that. And we receive 600 bed sheets every week. It's a relentless amount of material. So this is an area that I think needs a tremendous amount of work. We've redistributed to homeless shelters, to artists, to schools, but it's so ongoing. And I have a number of ideas of how some kind of system could work. The biggest problem is storage. And the latest idea that we've come up with is if MassDEP could, or someone could invest in maybe a series, a large amount of containers that could be located across the state, for example, at distribution centers. Like we are a distribution center, the Old Stone Mill, for these materials, as is Devon's Eco-Efficiency Center. They're very valuable materials, but if you can't store them, you can't redistribute them. And so that's kind of where we've come to in this conundrum, because I think if a textile waste ban is put into place, these linens companies have very few options. I mean, for example, just 1 week's worth of linens would fill a Planet Aid bin. There just isn't enough room for them. So I'm happy to answer questions, about that challenge that we've faced. It's really hard, but I can certainly say that the materials are in almost perfect shape, and it would be really sad for them to be chopped up and recycled because they're so incredibly useful.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
When you say linen materials that are coming from these facilities, are they finished? Like,
yes.
Are you talking about like bed sheets
it's the
that
hotel
are
and restaurant industry,
used?
so they launder for those industries. So the bed sheets are in all sizes. They're in almost perfect shape. That's why they've gone to shelters. We have chef jackets, we have chef pants, we have uniforms, we have lab coats, we have beautiful tablecloths, napkins that you would see in a restaurant. We have hospital johnnies that are pristinely clean in all patterns and colors. But this is 6.25 tons a year from a small linens company.
Right.
So those are just some examples. We get many other materials that, like if they're discontinuing something, at one point we got like 2,000 disaster blankets, we get fatigue mats. Sometimes everything is brand new and in the package because a restaurant changed their mind and didn't want a particular color. The list goes on. I mean,
then is this, and I'm gonna play dumb because like, unlike you guys, I'm not a professional, but is this
neither am I.
So is this like a supply chain problem where, like I volunteer for the ARC, they have program homes for people with disabilities, like all these, are there places that then there's no network for them to know that this resource exists and that they can get these materials? Like what's the problem with the supply chain, I guess is my question.
So the facility, they're a competitive for-profit industry. They have to sort their inventory every day because they can't give something to a hospital that has a rip or a tear. So it's a huge labor. So then they're stuck. They have no storage. What are they supposed to do with these materials unless they hired someone full-time to do what we're doing? It's really hard for them to redistribute them. I mean, just for us to do it, and no one in our organization is paid. This is a volunteer pilot project. It's a huge amount of work. So it's not, and that's what all the facilities are doing, these 90 facilities across the state. It's a hidden, they hide it. It's very hard to find this kind of thing out. So we found it out by going in their dumpster and seeing all the stuff, and then we had a meeting with them. And it's taken us 3 years to really build up enough trust with them to even be able to redistribute the materials, because some of them have markings on them, the name of the restaurant, the person, all of that. So it's very complicated.
I'd be curious, Fred, if you have any interaction with this type of commercial textile recovery. Fred, you're muted.
Sorry. So we do not. The market for used clothing does not include commercial textiles like bedding and linen and blankets, and definitely not clothing like for cooks and those uniforms. Uniforms is a no-no in our industry. It can't be sold as clothing again overseas, unfortunately. So, okay. So all of that is usually going to cutting, to be cut down to wipers in the wiper businesses. And there are some of those in Massachusetts. But yeah, I will certainly, Lenny, I will ask our sales people if they can take some of this, if there is a secondary market anyway overseas, because there's a lot of it that could be used, and it's really good stuff still. So I will get back to you on that.
Great. Yeah, we have worked with some places that have sent things to hospitals overseas.
Yeah, but that is still limited, compared to what we are producing of it in Massachusetts. But if you can take some of it that way, it would be great.
Mm-hmm. Most of it is 100% polyester.
Oh, okay. That's why it can't go to cutting.
Right.
Wipers are only cotton.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a piece of information that is a subtlety among, I appreciate all the comments about the definitions and the campaign, and we've been trying to get the word out and do educational campaigns on this since at least 2015. We do have a Beyond the Bin directory, which refers people to where to go locally. It's imperfect, as many of these directories are, because we just don't have the resources to make it perfect, but we do the best we can. But and it's a constant challenge to educate people that non-wearable clothing can be donated, or textiles such as linens. But there's a subtlety that I've only just learned, which is that polyesters can't be ragged, can't be cut for rags. And as Fred said, the fiber shredding companies that make like the fiber insulation, Millbury Recycling, I haven't been able to reach them. I don't know if they're still functioning. And other than that, the companies that make fiber insulation out of things like polyester are few and far between, and it's a real missing processing operation in our area. They're down in the southeast, like South Carolina. So those are some facts. And I also wanted to point out that Peg Hall posted some links on the chat page on DEP's Beyond the Bin directory, which is where we do it, locate collection facilities as we learn of them. And then recyclingworksma.com has a recycling directory by material, which also includes textile recovery options. Fred, were you going to say something else?
I can give you some good news.
Okay.
So only in the last year, even on the Corona times, we have increased our yield we look at it per bin or per location that we collect from, is gone up just about 100% since last year. And I attribute that to DEP's work of pushing this issue out to the cities and towns of more recycling, mostly. And it's certainly not our own effort that we get more textile. It is because the environment is changing in Massachusetts on this matter. So I think that's very encouraging. And then I think again that we just need to list all the locations and make it really easy, make an app maybe that people can look it up on their phone and see where can I donate? Where's the closest location I can donate to? Or things like that. So
Fred, if you get polyester material that isn't like wearable, does that go in the trash or does that go to fiber? It goes to fiber.
We don't do any fiber. We pass everything on to customers in Central America or Europe or Africa or someplace. So everything is being baled and shipped out.
Well, that's good.
If you are interested in the time in this call here, I can show you a couple of minutes video about our facility in Milford, if that's interesting for you.
All right, we'll see how it goes. I wanted to add something else about the centralized option for distribution, and someone mentioned the Devon's Eco Efficiency Center, and that is an existing exchange for furniture and office supplies, and I believe, I'm not sure how much they get into textiles, but that is an existing exchange that is fairly centrally located. It's in Devon's, which is Central Mass, and that might be something that you can all avail yourselves of, at least in the short term. And if someone can put the link up to that, Devon's Eco Efficiency Center, that would be great.
Okay, that's good.
And I'm not sure when this breakout room is actually going to end. It's slated for an hour, but I don't know exactly when it started. So I just want to make sure we try to cover as much as we can. So thank you so far. And does anybody else have anything to add to the commercial component or any of these components?
Yeah, it occurred to me, sorry, this is Cindy. I did want to talk about, Lenny, what you brought up. it's mind-boggling to me. I mean, when you think of just the idea of zero waste and sort of cutting down on that cycle, like if there are things, I mean, that are completely usable, except for, I mean, you describe them as pristine.
Yeah,
They should go. I'm sure there are small businesses, especially having a hard time right now, that would appreciate getting free stuff. And maybe it's a matter of finding some organization that would be willing to stitch over whatever names, or, identifying stuff that are there. But that just seems like, rather than that, I mean, I think the textile ban should come. I think we need to do that and figure out a way. I think you've brought up a problem, a big issue that, especially if it's still usable, right? And if Fred and those other companies don't have a place to sell it to, essentially, we've got to come up with some sort of exchange or something like that to get them used. That's all. Sorry, I didn't want to sound so.
Thank you for that. I mean, we can certainly demonstrate the importance of their reuse. We have distributed the sheets to new COVID shelters, all over the state. So I think it's a crime that these materials are being disposed of. And also it's sad that that waste is being hidden. And I think a big key to this is gaining the trust of these industries, because it's not really their fault. I don't really see what they're supposed to do with these materials. There's just so much of them. And I don't really have any answers, except that we need storage. We need many places where those materials could be stored to give us enough time to get them redistributed.
Well, I have the exact, I can't even talk. I'm so frustrated by this. What Cindy said, it's the same thing with food. I mean, I just heard on NPR this morning, like 1 out of 3 families in Massachusetts right now is struggling, with food insecurity. And yet the way our system, and I'm not talking about, Massachusetts, I mean, it's our country's problem. Something like 35% of the food we produce is thrown away. I mean, it's astonishing to me that in 2020, and especially in this year where, all these inequalities have a spotlight on them, that we can't figure this out. And that's where I go back to, when we talked earlier this year in one of the DEP gatherings about this, around the culture of reuse. I mean, we just have to reckon with the criminal amounts of waste that, our whole system enables. And we just, so Marissa, I understand what you're saying, because there's also like a very practical, mechanical way that things get done at a very local level. But it's just like, I just want to scream, like, let's just get off this insane carousel. So if we have to do it by starting with, we're just banning this. And it's going to push back on every part of the system that exists that is just wasting so much stuff, especially while there's so much need. I'm on the neighborhood listservs, people, the homeless, the shelters, the hospital, they need this stuff. And meanwhile, I'm not blaming anybody, Lenny. I agree with you. It's not like we should go, assail some industry that has no other way to deal with this stuff. But like, we all have to reckon with the just criminal amounts of waste that we generate every day. And that's what we mean by zero waste. Like, we've got to start there and then move backwards and just make the system reckon with all of this. It's just criminal that there are people without enough clothing, there are people without blankets, there are people, and these things are getting thrown into a landfill or incinerator that creates pollution for everybody. I can't bear it any longer. Sorry, it makes me crazy.
I hear you, Janet. I am so frustrated after saying all these things for 32 years and people still not getting it. It's very frustrating, and we do need to change the culture. We have a throwaway society. It's been that way for a long time, and it's really hard to change. We can struggle to try to change the culture, but it's sort of beyond our reach. Like, I think a lot of the people that are throwing stuff away aren't looking at our website or any website. They just, that's what they do. So anyway, I feel your frustration.
Can I give a couple really interesting examples, if that's okay? I think that without a structure in place, people can't achieve these goals. So years ago, there was nothing at the transfer station that we now call a take it or leave it shed. So now we have this structure. It's a beautiful addition to the culture of reuse. So every week or 2 weeks or whenever people go to their transfer station, they have a place where they can bring something and drop it off. And it's easy for them. It's actually become something that's kind of fun. So what we need is that same idea, but we need it in a much bigger way than we've ever imagined, which is why the linens industry is such a perfect challenge. And I think in one of our conversations with another working group, we discussed, creating a system of underused buildings across the state. For example, armories are open and available and empty, and old school buildings. And we have to have a way, like a large take it or leave it shed, where industry and people can come together and have a place to bring these things. And a great example is when I was talking with Donna Neely at Devon's Eco-Efficiency Center, there was a hotel in her area that was throwing out all their mattresses. They're in perfect condition, but they do that every 5 years because they're a hotel, like the linens industry. There's another place in Massachusetts called Household Goods. They needed and they wanted the mattresses. So they got a storage container. Temporarily, it was donated to them. They took all the mattresses and they were able to redistribute those mattresses within 3 days. That's how valuable they were to the people that they serve. So that's a really good example of the importance of storage. And I really think we have to think in that bigger picture and not sort of, I totally get the frustration of this throwaway society, but we have to create options. That's really, I think, the direction we need to go in. It's going to take some time, but it's really valuable to have that larger way of dealing with the surplus that we generate as a culture.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I agree. Once we have the infrastructure in place, so there's infrastructure and then there's getting the word out to whether it's residents or these linen companies. We found that with our, there's this big effort to reduce contamination in the curbside recyclables, and we've done a ton of work. I feel like we have succeeded in that in New Bedford. We've reduced contamination vastly. And so with a really big outreach effort over years, gradually you do actually make an impact on people's behaviors. So it can be done, but it needs to be broad. It needs to be like Recycle Smart MA. It needs to be a big campaign, but along with that infrastructure, like you're saying.
Yeah, thank you. And I was going to mention Recycle Smart MA as well, because we do try to use that for all these purposes as well. So it's a start in that direction.
And if I can just hop in really quick, Marissa, you had a point before about, there's a lot of things that need to happen before the textile ban goes into place, and I understand your concern. But if you look at recycling as an example, we've had that ban for a long time, right? And we know that there are recyclables that are going into the trash, right? We know that that's still happening. So I don't think that necessarily one has to come before the other. I think we just have to got to do it all, and it may take many years, but we got to do it all.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I just had, I'm wondering, somebody had a question earlier in the chat that I don't think that you read. And I wanted, and it has to do with actually something that Vital had mentioned earlier as well, in terms of transparency from, maybe groups like Planet Aid and stuff. And Fred, I know you mentioned you have a video, but, and I'll confess to not having been to Planet Aid's website or whatever, so maybe you are very transparent about where your things go, but there have been people that say, oh, well, I don't know if those clothings, really get to people in need or something like that. So I'm not sure how, you know, there may need to be some more communication about that and more transparency. I'm not saying that I don't know what the solution is, but I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, so transparency is of course very important. That you tell what you do with the textiles, or to do with the money that you get from it, and we are very transparent about that. But there's only one layer of this in terms of capturing more of the textiles. I think I mean, a for-profit company does not have to be transparent about what they do. They make money. A non-profit company needs to be transparent because it's a public thing, right? So we have different ways of doing it. What I think is more important to capture more textiles is that we combine and we make information about it available to people to, you know, maybe only 5% people care if they donate to a for-profit bin or rather than, non-profit bin rather than a for-profit bin. It's mostly about convenience, getting rid of it. So I think on the higher level is more a matter of information and accessible data where you can donate, or where you can bring it, or if it's being picked up at the curbside, or what day it is, and so on. So we should.
True, but I think, I mean, to what Vital was saying earlier is, you know, if I put, you know, 10 pounds of stuff in the bin, how people are worried, like, how do I know that, you know, 9.9 pounds of it actually went to being something, and or you know, 1 pound of it went, you know, ended up being trash. And maybe you're right, maybe it's just about sort of more educational thing, and to get people to not leave whatever a big plastic toy in there, or something that's really wet, or, you know, and it's just a matter of that communication to sort of maximize the reuse of things, and so they don't end up in landfills, incinerators.
I think it's about education, not, and of course people don't donate wet clothing. They get wet because we are not doing our part. We're letting the bin overflow, or there's a storm that we cannot avoid, or something that happens. People for the most part are doing the right things, but then there are also people that don't want to pay to get their TV to the dump. So they put it outside the bin instead, or the mattress. So there are some infrastructure issues we have in this. Not the banning, I'm all in for the banning of textiles in the waste, basically, but we do need to work out the infrastructure for how that can be implemented in a good way then. Because if companies like Bay State or Goodwill or Planet Aid are being inundated with waste that we have to pay for on top of what we already do, the purpose of the business is kind of not there, if you know what I mean. So yeah, we need to work that out. But let's ban it. We've been trying to do that for a long time. So I'm happy we're doing it.
Fred, would you say that some of the issues that you get for trash might be because some of the other organizations like Goodwill or Salvation Army actually do accept the toys and other items that not, so that, in other words, the public is confused about the message about who takes what?
No, I don't think so. If people want to give their toys or the furniture away, they go to Goodwill or Salvation Army at the stores and drop it off. People that are moving out and are not so rich, maybe, they take the shortcut and drop it at the bin, because why not? Unfortunately, and it's too costly to bring it to the recycling station. So I don't think that analogy is correct, what you're saying. People know what they're doing.
Also, the bins are labeled, so they clearly say, you know, clothes, shoes, whatever, linens, whatever it is. So yeah. I agree that people are just taking advantage of something that's easier. Vital had a question also that never got addressed. He was looking for another potential company that would collect from households. Was that what you were wondering about, Vital, like Simple Recycling?
Yeah, so my question was, see, we do have, even in Somerville, a lot of drop boxes, although we as a city don't collaborate with them, but we encourage, that's not an issue in any private lot. However, when I'm going, what I found the biggest advantage of Simple Recycling was the curbside pickup, and that is working great. And that is interestingly not limiting or reducing any textile or clothing that goes to any other drop boxes or even Salvation Army or Goodwill. So it is working really great. However, my concern is simple, that it is like a one company right now, and I'm not talking from the monopoly perspective, but if for any reason anything happens to that company, the challenge is that now our residents are very much used to getting picked up something at their doorstep, and what to do with that.
Yeah.
So that's what my question was.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that what you find with people that curbside pickup is hugely expensive way of operating a business, first of all. So let's see how long time they stay around doing what they're doing. Adding another curbside pickup, now we have two companies that need to compete for the same pounds, so to speak. There would be less revenue for both. So I think competitive-wise, it's difficult to run curbside collection unless the town is paying for it or paying part of it or something. I don't know, Vital, if you are paying for the curbside.
No, we don't pay. Yeah.
Marissa just made a note that Retriever is RETRIEVR is another company that she believes collects by appointment. And I was going to add that Helpsy, another company, Helpsy, is doing collection by appointment, I believe, in Boston. So those are a couple more you can check in.
Great, thank you. I mean, we are not looking right now, but we had that discussion in the past. So I thought this is the right forum to bring it.
Yeah.
I agree. We had met with Simple Recycling a few times. And in the last conversation, they wanted the drivers of, I guess, either the trash or the recycling trucks to have tablets in their vehicles, and then they would note down when there's a pink bag. So it would be like those drivers were, I guess, going before their trucks go and almost making a route for them. But we found that wasn't something that was feasible for either communities to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the model of collecting citywide when not every household has a bag out is, I think it's by appointment is the way that's more economical, and they just need to figure out how to do that. Other comments or thoughts? Okay, well, let me see. I am just copying all these comments into a document. Someone had wanted to make sure everyone gets these resources, which we will be sending out, and we will be sending out a link to this that you're welcome to, a link to the recording as well as notes.
And how do we get each other's emails if we want them?
That we have a list of all the registrants, and that contains their emails. I don't know if we can share them, but I can ask if everyone in this does anybody in this breakout session not want their email shared with each other?
I have no problem.
Okay, I will, we will at least get you those, and if we can send the registrants for the whole meeting, we'll do that as well. Sure.
Yeah, that would be good. Thank you.
All right. Well, I think we've really covered a lot of information and a lot of challenges and a lot of ideas to improve the infrastructure and communication and find central locations for this material. So I think that we might be wrapping up. We're ready to wrap up.
Question?
Yes.
Of course, this is the first time I've ever met all you folks or been on anything like this. Is there such a thing as a working group on textiles at the state level? Is this kind of the first time that a bunch of people have come together to talk about this? Or is there an ongoing conversation that some of us could listen into?
There have been meetings of textile stakeholders for two years now, basically the industry people.
Right.
And now this is really our first effort to have more of a larger conversation about textile reuse. So I would consider this kind of a new occurrence, a new development, and one that we are working, just to give you a little background, we're working to incorporate, reduce and reuse and reduce materials into the solid waste master plan, and textiles is part of, so textiles is part of that larger effort. But out of it, I believe we will continue to have like textile subgroups that will work on this. And that's a great suggestion. I think, would it be fair to say that everyone in this session would like to participate in a textile subgroup, working group?
Even if only to listen, but to pick up ideas. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Helen. I will share that.
You can also note that in this session, there's only one actual stakeholder. Kind of.
No.
We don't have Goodwill here. We don't have Bay State here. We don't have Simple Green or Healthy. The guys are supposed to collect it. You have the goods and you want to increase the collections in your area, but it's us that need to do it with you, right? So we are missing a lot of stakeholders, to be honest.
That's true. And we did think that some reps from HELPSI would be here, and I guess maybe something came up because they were registered. But yeah, that's a good point.
I'd also like to see a separate group that just worked with commercial reuse, commercial industries, because it's very different than household.
Yes.
Reuse and redistribution. The volumes are so much higher, and I think just being able to try to get some of those industries to the table is where we would need to begin. So I guess I would prefer to work on that part of it.
That's a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Thank you.
And Marisa, I would reach out to you about New Bedford to see if we can do something together there.
That's great. So I don't know when we go back to the main room or not. Normally we get a message that says this will wrap up in 2 minutes or something, and I don't see that. It's almost 11:30.
How long is the meeting supposed to be, or when is it supposed to end?
I think it was, yes, to noon. Oh, I see the agenda. I'm sorry. 11:30 is the report out from the breakout rooms.
So if I can ask, I do. So we have a couple of minutes left. If I can ask, probably Fred, and I know we brought up this. I brought up multiple times sometimes the issue of transparency and what have you. And you mentioned that the usable clothing you sell to companies in Europe and Africa and South America. So what exactly can you just like walk us through like what happens to that clothing that's
Yeah.
usable?
So what we pick up in Massachusetts is not being sorted at all. It's being bundled and then shipped to customers that we sell it to. And most of it go to Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Chile, and some places even in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. And they open these bundles and sort out the clothing and sell it in open markets or in thrift stores. So it's being reused as clothing for the most part. And then what what they cannot sell or is too low quality, they repackage that and ship it to Pakistan to be shredded, for example. So it's a huge industry. Used clothing from the US is supposedly the seventh biggest in volume of export from this country. It's huge, though not in money, but in volume.
And so presumably there is the chance, much like what happened with recyclables and why, the China stored and why China, said, I don't want to take this recycling because it's too contaminated. And, the things that couldn't be recycled that didn't have value, were ending up in burning, open burning and rivers and things like that. Do you have a sense of, is there a sort of a chain in terms of where this stuff goes we have an idea that this may not be happening?
Well,
in the textile?
If it ends up in Central America and they can't use it, it probably ends up in the landfill in Central America. I know in Hungary, there's some companies there. The unusable textiles, they turn in that to bricks that's being used by factories that need fire or heat, like concrete factories. So they burn the textiles instead, and which is one use. But DEP in Massachusetts is not really keen on getting that far. We're talking about reuse and repurposing rather than burning the textiles so far. But the ultimate purpose of using something that cannot be used would probably be best to burn it rather than landfill it.
I just saw the message. We have about 30 seconds left, I think.
Yes, and it looks like we will automatically be closed out of this breakout room and brought into the main room.
Thank you, Anne.
The number one on the breakout room list that I'm looking at. So Rachel, do you want to give us some highlights?
Sure. So we were the furniture and fixture reuse. Some of the challenge, we had a great group of people, I will say. I was a little late joining, but I also took like 5 pages of notes, so we had great conversation. Some of the challenges, which I think are expected, is the timing of things. When you get things, how fast you can move it. Storage is involved, labor is involved, transportation. It's very expensive to kind of, coordinate all these logistics, and people don't understand that. So, that's a challenge, and COVID has also played into that because more offices are closing. More offices might be transitioning to full remote. Colleges and universities are maybe doing, renovations. So there's a lot of times there's an influx, and then it can be quiet for a while, but there's not a lot of balance. And so that's a challenge for many of these places. Storage, goes hand in hand with that. Let's see. And then, sometimes the perception of used furniture or equipment, you know, how to change that so that people, you know about these places, the marketing of some of these, you know, stores that sell reused furniture and equipment, or companies that do this. It's hard to get people to even, you know, think about them. You know, that's not their first thought. You know, communicating that the pieces are safe. You know, some of the older people talk about some of the challenges with the older furniture is that they could have chemicals of concern, whether it's brominated flame retardants, formaldehyde, lead paint. You know, those are things that, you know, you need to take into consideration and could be a game changer for actual safer use. And then if it's other equipment, if it's in working order, or, you know, safety, if there's recalls, things like that. With COVID, again, more cleaning and sanitizing, and making sure people feel comfortable with that. So that's a lot of challenges. Some nuggets that I thought were kind of good ideas. Laurel mentioned there's a Finnish company that's doing an RFID tag on furniture that they produce. And so this can help with planning for, you know, companies that work with offices and things that or colleges that are doing a big clean out. If they have an inventory of furniture, they can better plan, like, okay, where they're going to take it, and, you know, get customers in order to facilitate moving that furniture. So that was one idea. More incentives, whether it's from MassDEP or other government, you know, organizations, but something like social capital credits. So if you do things that benefit the community, you know, like keeping this trash up, keeping the furniture out of the trash and finding ways to reuse it, you know, is there an incentive that, you know, somebody could get municipal services, you know, like a discount of municipal services, or credits for local businesses, something to kind of incentivize people to make the effort to reuse. Other people, someone else noted that, you know, there's a lot of vacant buildings right now. And is there a way that you could utilize those vacant offices and shopping malls to kind of to store some of this furniture? Because especially the big oversized pieces like queen size beds and sofas, it's really hard to move those. And, you know, the space is definitely an issue, but there's a lot of empty space now. And so can we be more strategic about that? And in the future, could communities have like designated warehouses to accumulate these things that people know about and people can utilize? And we talked about leasing models. So lease, you know, furniture leasing instead of, you know, buying. And I think that tends to be a lot of higher end right now, but we said, well, what about college students? You know, a lot of times they only need furniture for 1 year or 2 years. And so they get something maybe at a restore, and then they use it for a year, and then they bring it back to that restore. Is there a way to kind of cut that out, and so that there's more, you know, leasing model or facilitation of that? I don't know, Erin, did I miss anything?
I think you did a great job recapping that. And I just wanted to add in that I know that some of you at the beginning had expressed interest that maybe there were a couple groups that you had wanted to participate in. When we share out the working group meeting summary at the end, if there's things that like our group didn't get around to discussing, social barriers or possible solutions or innovative ideas that you had that you wanted to add to the conversation and to our knowledge, please email us and we can include those as well. So yeah, I think that we had a really, I mean, as you could tell from Rachel, we had a really great conversation, but there might be other ideas among everyone else on this call that if you want to contribute, we would love to hear them. At that, I will turn it over to Kathy to share out about the group about electronics.
Thanks, Erin. So I was in the electronics breakout room. There was a lot of great conversation, so I hope I didn't miss anything. But some of the bigger things with barriers, we talked about solar panels, and after the warranty expires, basically the manufacturers want to destroy them rather than reusing them or giving them second life. because they're at a lower efficiency, but just because it's at a lower efficiency doesn't mean it can't be used elsewhere. Even a 50% efficient solar panel is still better than nothing. So talking about how to move manufacturers from wanting to destroy the property after to allowing it to be resold to somewhere else, to a different country where it can be reused. Similar issues are in other electronics like laptops, computers, cell phones. Rather than destroying them or throwing them out, give them second life and allow other users to use them. Manufacturers use fair campaigns to say that electronics can't be reused because your data is there and someone else can access it and access your private information. And that's kind of specific to HIPAA laws for health departments, that computers that are used and store patient data have to be, the hard drives have to be destroyed instead of just being wiped or trying to use that equipment or sell it for a second life. Manufacturers and computers, software updates stop after a while. So even if you have an older piece of equipment that still works, still charges, that you repaired, or it still works, eventually the manufacturer will stop giving software updates. So it becomes obsolete and you're kind of forced to buy new equipment, and then you can't really, there's no second life for it if you can't use it for what it's primarily being used for. And then we talked about a lot of solutions, like adding different language to procurement policies. So adding language that says working equipment can become surplus and sold as surplus property instead of being destroyed or shredded. There was a lot of talk of trying this with state departments, universities, to kind of use the surplus equipment that's not being used with the workers as much to be given somewhere else where it can have a second life. We talked a lot about the right to repair legislation and how important it is for manufacturers to kind of provide the repair manuals and software tools, not just for their own like companies use, but for customers and independent repair professionals. So they have the opportunity to repair what's wrong with it instead of going and having to pay a lot more money or just having to buy a new product because they couldn't repair the old one. Another idea was to require manufacturers to follow the waste hierarchy, to reduce, then reuse, then recycle, but to add in penalties or consequences if they don't follow this and prove that they do. And what else? Someone shared something that's happening in Europe, where France released repairability scoring indexes that assign score based on how repairable the product is. And they're looking to introduce it as an EU-wide policy to have these labels on products that kind of tell customers the durability and the repairability of a product to influence their purchasing decisions. So there's a lot more, but I think that's some of the bigger things. Brooke, if you have anything else to add. Brooke, you're muted.
Thank you. Great job. I wanted just to add that we had a really interesting discussion about solar panels, and California, sort of learned about California and what they're anticipating is a lot that solar panels are being made at what's called builder grade, which means their lifespan is more like 5 to 10 years instead of 10 to 20 years. And so Doug from California Product Stewardship Council, sort of raised the warning flag and said, let California be a lesson. This is a mess. What we're getting is low quality solar panels, and that in Massachusetts, maybe we have an opportunity to try and nip that in the bud by creating procurement regulations, procurement rules that mandate a higher quality and more durability of panels. So that was really interesting. Thank you.
Great, and it sounds like you guys had a amazing discussion. If we can have the textiles group report out, Veronique.
Yes, thanks. So we had a wonderful discussion too. We did have Fred Olson from Planet Aid with us, which was great to have somebody give us a lot of information from the industry perspective. We started off with a lot of statistics, which were interesting. It's about 275,000 tons are actually being thrown away annually. And we were curious about how much do we actually capture then? And Fred was letting us know he thinks it's about 15% of textiles throughout the whole country, but Massachusetts is probably capturing 20 to 25% because we have more of a focus on it. Usually about 80 pounds per person per year is thrown away, which kind of astounded me. So probably about 60,000 tons we are actually currently capturing in Massachusetts. So that was good to know. The challenges that came up, the first one was really about education. A lot of people are so confused about what actually is a textile, what's the definition of a textile, what actually do the companies, what will they accept into their bins or their collections curbside. There was a suggestion for some kind of universal labeling that would make this clearer, and also the suggestion for some kind of umbrella organization or centralized method for getting all this information out to everybody in Massachusetts to make it easier, like kind of a one-stop shopping. So we did mention, of course, Beyond the Bin and Recycling Works. And we spent some time on the household textiles, but then also we had Lenny Freed with us, who gave us an update on what she's doing on the commercial end of things. And that's really important information. There's a huge amount of commercial textiles that are out there that would need to be captured that are currently being disposed of. One interesting thing about the commercial textiles that Lenny deals with this is they tend to be all polyester, and that's actually a challenge for repurposing a lot of that material. Let's see, we talked about drop-off versus curbside collection of textiles and the differences with those, and whether there was more than one vendor doing the curbside collection. And so we have a couple of those links that we can be sharing. I'm trying to think of what else. I have 5 pages of notes too, but it's I'm trying to boil it down. We did get some good news from Fred that since COVID, the recycling of textile, the donations has increased about 100%. So that's really nice to know. And hopefully that trend will continue. A lot of the stuff that they collect is actually sent overseas, at least through Planet Aid, who is with us today. Let me see here. On the commercial end of things, what Lenny's working on, she's been doing this for about 3.5 years. She gathers about 6.25 tons per year, and this is just from one linens company. And it's estimated that there are 90 such companies across the state. So that's a huge amount of tonnage of linens that are out there. She gets about 600 bed sheets every week, which is amazing. So let me see. We also talked about a little bit about transparency from the companies that do take in our textiles about where it's actually going. You know, how much of it gets repurposed or recycled, torn up for rags, or shredded for carpet. And Fred did share with us that about 18% of the donations that come in is actually just trash. Things that people are just kind of getting rid of that they shouldn't be, up to like mattresses and propane tanks. And I mean, we all know, we've seen the bins, and people just kind of take advantage of that and decide they're just going to dump off their stuff. So that's definitely a challenge. Anne, did I miss anything else in there?
Thank you, Veronique. That was great. There was a lot of focus on the need for infrastructure, more infrastructure for textile recycling, as well as the communications, the methodology to get the word out and educate people are both key. And there was support for the ban, and generally all around, and also concern about the need for more infrastructure and to be in place to help make it work. There was also talk about how dumping of mattresses and furniture at Planet Aid bins is happening a lot more than before. And it was Fred's opinion that that's because of convenience and not because of people not knowing that can't be, that shouldn't be, that's not going to be reused. It's just people moving out or whatnot, and they just need a place to take that stuff. So that's a problem that also needs to be worked on. And there's a lot of support for changing our culture from basically throwaway society to a reuse culture. And there was a lot of interest in having a continuing textile work group, both for household material and commercial material. So,
great, thank you both for sharing out about your group. We will now move on to building materials, and I know both Janine and Kathy were taking notes in this, so I'll let them tag team that however they feel makes the most sense.
Would you like me to start, Jean, or would you like to?
I was going to start, Kathy, but we're first of all, same as everybody, lots of great discussion. I was, while others were talking, I was listening in, but I was also putting stars next to the points that I felt most important to mention, and all of the points in my notes are starred. So it was very, very informative, great discussion. So some of the same concepts, some of the same challenges with the others we heard from, supply and demand. You know, one of the speakers talked about marble mantles, clawfoot tubs, and in the storage of these items is that they get so many, they're wonderful items. And a suggestion of, you know, maybe better inventorying and better detailing of some of these materials, the sizes and whatnot would be helpful. The mention of lead paint issue, they have wonderful mantles from pre-1978. Some of the misconceptions are that these lead mantles can be an issue. Warehouse space, storage for materials collected. One speaker mentioned remanufacture of some of these items. We might not necessarily use a marble mantle for its original purpose, but lots of opportunity and utilizing these materials for remanufacturing new items. There was a discussion of the job creation and the difference in the number of jobs created from deconstruction versus demolition. Many more jobs, 20 more jobs for deconstruction than there are for demolition. The Portland, Oregon model was discussed. You know, there was mention of natural disasters. Katrina was mentioned, and many of the buildings were destroyed, and the parts from those buildings were used to fix the historic buildings that may not have been fully destroyed. Then the building efficiency when using older materials. Much of the oldest, you know, there's a misconception that old materials aren't as good, but some of the older structural materials are even better quality and add to the greenness of construction. Tax incentives for reuse were made a suggestion to mandate or provide tax incentives. One speaker just said very eloquently, why is it so inexpensive to dispose of materials? We should incentivize builders to donate and to reconstruct or to use, to deconstruct. Somebody mentioned maybe RDP points for some type of building permit sign off where builders commit to donating materials or deconstruction rather than demolition or disposing. Getting through them pretty quick here. Again, the space constraints, storing these materials came up. That came up a few times. As far as DEP helping, training, commercial construction training. Oftentimes, timing is of the essence. Contractors, owners that want to get buildings built, they don't have time to plan the deconstruction, and some don't realize the benefits. So training for carpenters, unions, guidelines for construction. We did provide a link to our C&D webpage. Some of those things can be found on our awesome C&D webpage. Okay, modular homes were talked about, and incentivizing utilization of reclaimed building material in construction of modular homes. DEP could incentivize that kind of requirement. Then there was a very interesting point from David Bennick from the reuse consultant. The price of construction has gone way up, or building materials, I should say, for wood during the pandemic. And they sold out of 2x4s, reclaimed 2x4s during this pandemic, to the point where they cannot provide reclaimed 2x4s for construction. So, Kathy?
That's great, Janine. I think you hit on most of the major points because there was so much good information shared, but I just, to underscore, the supply and demand came up a lot, sort of knowing where to take materials for contractors to know where to bring them. And then also for architects and homeowners to know where to find them. So a lot of it has to do with connecting the dots. And when Janine mentioned the C&D resources on DEP's website, that perhaps information about reuse opportunities could be added to that, in addition to C&D processing if it's not already there, so that folks who go to it would see a variety of opportunities. Definitely underscoring the training. I think there was, I put a few stars next to that myself. Specific training for deconstruction, a residential pilot focusing on residential explicitly, and a pilot was recommended that would really kind of hit a home run, was what was suggested. So to show how to do it and to talk about the cost issues so that it sort of demystifies concerns about cost in doing so. And I loved hearing from Portland, Oregon, that they actually did a deconstruction on live TV. I thought that sounded really awesome to really just kind of show people. I find that that's such a great tool. And yes, incentives, and then other things that Portland, Oregon did as a city, that they were such a leader that they created incentives, financial incentives for contractors. If they would salvage and could salvage a deconstruction project and show documentation, they would get a $500 offset that could go to the homeowner or the contractor. And then it built up to $2,500 incentive if you plan to deconstruct. So really some neat things happening on the West Coast that I think we can learn from. So thanks, it was a great group.
Great, thank you both. Sharon, I am sorry, you're gonna have to go really quick. We just had so much other exciting notes about all the other sessions, but Sharon, could you share out about the transportation and distribution packaging discussion real quick? Oh, you're muted.
Losing valuable time here. We were a small but potent group. There were 8 of us, 3 of us were from MassDEP, 1 was from Recycling Works, and then we had Laura, we had Melissa and Marie that were municipal folks that are very active in their communities where they reside or have resided, working on bans and other waste reduction initiatives. We had Paul Benoit from Box Save. His company delivers reusable, durable, and made from recycled content plastic moving containers. He has grown his business from 500 boxes to up to 6,700. His biggest challenge is getting the word out, consumer education. And then our our 8th very valuable participant was Laura Lillienkamp, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. And Laura is with the Western Mass Creative Use Network, and where they are trying to get waste to makers. And their biggest challenge is finding storage space. And I'm going to just kind of jump around. To which Julia's mentioned, why are we looking for more storage? Why aren't we looking for models that are more like a buy nothing or the greater Boston Food Bank, which which acts as a hub. And we talked a lot about that, about having a hub where folks can go and find where material is rather than having to store it. But we definitely need storage as well. Laurel talked about Raytheon, how they require suppliers to use reusable shipping containers. And, you know, we talked about, you know, as regards what can the state do? And apparently the state is looking at how they can promote sustainable packaging in their contracts. Maybe a particular vendor might earn more points. But as Melissa and Marie both said, you know, municipalities can be doing the same, as well as businesses, like we heard about Raytheon. Claudine mentioned that we really need to get facilities directors and the folks that are involved in transportation management in their particular companies. Paul said we need moving companies. We also should have Amazon in the room, and WB Mason was mentioned because they're a large supplier to municipalities. Laura, they're looking for election signs. They are repurposing election signs. They're having challenges with finding reuse options for those plastic bags that contain pellets or grain, birdseed bags. And we talked about just what are the tools that are available right now. We talked about Recycle Smart, which was great, and also Beyond the Bin, and Recycling Works for communities. And I'm just looking over my notes. Oh, actually, Paul gave us, he gets his containers from Reusable Transport out of Florida. And as I said, they contain recycled content. And they will also take back broken containers. So we really want to have more models like that. So despite the fact we're a small group, I think there was a lot of really great info. And hopefully for our next meeting, we'll get some more interested parties and vested parties in on this conversation, because it's really important. I don't know, Claudine or anybody else, if you have anything to add.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're already at 12 o'clock. Okay. So what I'm going to say is that I definitely want Claudine to add to, especially in the meeting notes, if there's anything wasn't captured or anybody notices that there was an idea that they shared wasn't captured, to do it then. But I want to be respectful of people's time, and I had wanted to share out, can you guys see the slides that I'm sharing? In the invite to this meeting, I had, you guys see what I'm, sorry, I can't tell.
Yeah. Yes, it's up.
Okay. There, in the meeting invite, I had mentioned that we have a last call for a grant project. So if anyone has inspired from great ideas that they talked about in this discussion and they really wanted to bring a project to life, submit a micro grant to get some funding for that, just email me if you want more information. And then the next meeting will be January 27th, where we can continue these conversations. We're mainly going to be talking about how we're going to move the Reduce and Reuse Action Plan forward at that point in terms of the methodology, the outline, and the prioritization tools to decide which things we will take action on. So don't miss that. And then lastly, I just wanted to note that this link will be sent out, but we do have a directory of everyone who's participated in these Reduce and Reuse working groups and a listserv. So if you want to connect with anyone that you met today out of this meeting, or just share ideas or share things in between meetings, please utilize these networking tools. And if there is anybody who does not want to be added to this list, please let me know so that I don't add you to a list that you don't want to be added to. With that, I really appreciate everyone's time and everyone's good ideas and everyone's thoughts. And we will send out meeting summary notes soon. And just thank you for being here, and have a great rest of your day, and happy holidays and a happy new year. Okay, with that, we are done.